All right, welcome. This is a published public hearing. It's Friday, August 18th, 2017 at 6 p.m. President Osher, de Cordova, Ford, Bacon, Ford. This is a public hearing to take public comment on, if necessary, to discuss the proposed tax rate for fiscal year 2018 for Tom Green County. Currently, the proposed tax rate is 54.5 cents. The prior tax rate was 51.25 cents. Excuse me, 51.8%. The effective rate is 48.979 cents, and the rollback rate is 54.607 cents. All right, that's the official announcement that I need to make. If you will allow me, there's no rules about how we conduct these public hearings. You are on the record. Instead of asking you to fill out a form, what I'm going to do is ask you to just state your name and address into the microphone onto the record. I'm not going to place any limits on anyone unless you all tell me you want limits placed if somebody is taking too much time. Okay? We have no idea how many people to expect. If you will allow me to, I have about 10 minutes of information I want to give you about a little bit of historical data, where we're at, and a little bit of a reminder about what counties do. First off, I apologize if we're here on Friday night. We had pre-published dates for these hearings. Historically, for the 11 years prior I've been here, they were always done during the day. This time, because of our situation with the tax rate, we chose to do one of them at night. The second one was chosen. I was unaware of Friday night, and my proof is of it. Our son is a freshman playing his first scrimmage game on varsity right now in Miles, Texas, and I'm here. So I promise you I would not have stepped on that if I had realized that at the time. The second thing from the hearing the other day and from a presentation I gave over in the library Thursday night, I'd like to read something, and it's a public press release that I released, and it's concerning the bankruptcy of Tom Green County. This was released on August the 2nd at 9 a.m. Tom Green County is not at the risk of bankruptcy. Yesterday, a commissioner used this term in an attempt to underscore the impact of the state's failure to provide adequate funds for mandated services, actions to limit our local control, and the financial burden of criminal activity. Tom Green County is sound financially, has an excellent credit rating built from years of conservative and prudent leadership. We have and will continue to maintain a healthy reserve fund of at least 20% of operating expenses to protect the county from unforeseen circumstances. We will take the steps necessary to keep the county strong for the future. So, with that said, I'm learning something about trying to disseminate information in today's world. Is that it's a difficult task. Once something gets out there, it's somewhat hard to kind of quell that. But that was the morning after it was reported that we were going to raise the tax rate to keep from going bankrupt. That was an expression of frustration. So with that said, I would like to, there's a screen around behind you, and if you allow me just a few minutes to give you a little bit of primer about Texas and counties and their authority. We're much different than cities, much different than cities, and considerably different from school districts. Counties basically operate under direct authority, one, the federal government, the Texas Constitution, statutes, state departmental rules, court decisions, attorney generals, and you'll see your name right down there a little bitty at the bottom. Go ahead, go to the next one.
We're trying to get it larger. There we go.
All right. Okay. All right. From there, we're basically agents of the state, and you can't see the allow, but what we do has to be contained within those two terms. The state says you shall do this, and it specifically has to say we allow you to do this. And anything outside of that, we're prohibited from doing. That's the reason we have no ordinance authority, land use authority, that sort of thing. And to give you some examples, you can see on the left about the statute that we're mandated to do. We have to have these elected officials. We've got to run the courts. We've got to have a sheriff. Even though the sheriff, the deputies are what y'all tell us that you want. Generally, the shall is what the state says, allows what the citizens over a period of time told us they need. We're not required to provide them deputies, but in reality, yes, we do. It's got to run the jail. We've got probation departments. Allows a number of jailers, even though the Texas Commission, that's one of those departmental rules that tells us how many we have to have. Got to provide for prosecution and defense, county roads, elections, and this and that. And you get over on the right-hand column, those are the allowables that we deal with, having to do with kind of public welfare, obviously the economic development, libraries, parks, extension, the rest of that. So just a little bit of an overview of the authority that we operate under. All right, we got the list. What's the next one? All right, here is our adopted budgets for the last 4 years. Okay. The top 3 of those primarily have to do with property tax collection, which has been for 140 years our primary mechanism of operating county government. As you can see, the 4th one is sales tax, and you can see the history of that. And the bottom one is other receipts, and that's a whole host of things in there. That's fines that our JPs and courts assess. That's fees for the office and filing records at the county clerks or wherever, and state shared revenue back. Whenever state money comes back, that's where that goes. Obviously, you can see where those bottom 2 have trended over the last 4 years. Okay. The top one, the property tax, is as proposed at the rate that we have now. From there, let me give you a little bit of history of what's going on with things. And I'll show you the complete data on that here shortly. So, all right, when I went to office, that's January 1st, 2014. I went in December 1st, 2013. We were at 52.5-cent tax rate. Click the next one. That's what kind of occurred during that course of the year. Got a little connection, get fixed out. All right, we had lowered for 2015, fiscal year 2015, we set a tax rate. Well, that happened during that budget that we were operating under at that point in time. You can see the box at the top is directly off Office of Court Administration. The jail population is pulled out of the jail commission standards for June of that last year, of that year as an average. And just some things that were going on in the county. We were scheduled to retire the last of our debt. We knew we had needs, so we contracted with a couple of people to assess those needs towards the end of that year. All right, we adopted the budget that we're fixing to go into for 2015 with 1 cent less because sales tax revenues, that sort of thing was better. So we lowered the rate of 1 cent for this next screen he's fixing to pull up. We're rocking along pretty good. Jail population's moving up, you know, kind of staying flat. I started adding felonies, the number of new felonies annually that are added. There's the budget that we adopted, and you can see the top box where we were at. The jail, the needs assessment was done. We established that $53.5 million if we used our same tax rate and moved it out to a longer term. That's the amount of money that we could borrow to try to take care of our jail needs and our courthouse renovation. We're operating under 6 variances with the jail commission standards. I know it's got a real pretty facade up front, but it's about 4 different versions of Adam that's behind that facade. And it also still has 4 courts operating in it and the county attorney's office. So we sold the bonds, and here we go. And then the water heater blows up. Click the next one. Look at January, obviously look at January 1st, 2017. Look at the jail population, look at the number of felonies added. And I say water heater because counties normally kind of out of sight, out of mind. Nobody pays any attention to them until something happens. Well, it happened. We had already lowered the rate another 1/4 cent at that point in time. Current rate that we're at. Now we'll move us to the present. All right, you can see the numbers of where our jail population has gone and the number of felonies on pace, that rate of increase. The 12 capital murder and the 10 regular, I had to update that because when we proposed that tax rate, within 4 days we had 2 more murder defendants in jail, with 3 more out there floating around that I do not know what's going to happen with. So that's the current situation. Click the next one. All right, there is the complete sheet that shows you where we have been. And Chad here is with the auditor's office, and we have every bit of financial information for the county that you could possibly know that he is able to pull up. Every scenario in the world. We can come back to this one. Go ahead and click to the next one. With this proposed budget, I asked them to pull up a little bit of information. You see the very top one, the road and bridge. That's one of those allows. Because the state has not changed the $10 fee, they allow us optionally, locally, to charge for that's dedicated to road and bridge. Since 1989, still the same $10. We had, to the point that about $1.8 million was dedicated money in our road and bridge department. That obviously got to the point where it would not work. There was about $1.8 million of general fund money in it. And this proposed budget, $500,000 has been pulled out of there. You can see the other line items through there that we pulled funding from and reduced. And then you can see the top 10 increases. Now, one thing that I would point out is right about the middle of that, the Parks Department construction expenses are $125,000. That is the last of what's left of about a $1.2 million proceeds from the sale of the Mount Susan Ranch about 18 months ago. The rest of that, half of it, has already been consumed, filling in for witness expenses, prisoner housing, that sort of thing. And the other half is plugged into this current budget to try to cover those items. We left that in there because there's about $800,000 or $900,000 worth of state and federal grants we're working on, and we have to have some kind of a match. We thought the idea is that money could be put in an endowment, since it came from the Cristobal area and the sale of that ranch, that it provided endowment to support parks countywide, but unfortunately that's changing. And you can see the yellow line on the bottom. We have all of that if you want to look at it. But of all of the line items outside of employee expenses, the operational line items, that's kind of 190 of them, 91 decreased, 264. There's a lot of them that are just flat fees for fire inspections and various things, and 118 increased. Where does the next one go? I've got it. All right, said, let me tell you a little bit about how we establish what tax base we're going to set a rate of. This is a sheet that's certified by their appraisal district. They're required to give us some preliminary values that's supposed to happen in June. And then by the end of, I think the 25th of July, they're supposed to certify their values. This is the sheet that we get. The school district will get one like this. It looks similar, but it has all the nuances of how schools are financed. The city gets one that has all the nuances of how they're financed.
Did they pay their electric bill?
As you can tell, the lights in here are motion sensitive. There's not any motion after a while, it shuts all the lights. So, just some interesting things. You can see the gross value for the county up there in that top right-hand corner. You get through everything else. You get through the ag exemptions and the statutory exemptions for some of it's environmental, some of it's oil field. It's various things that's happened over the years by statute that goes through that just adjust those values. Then you get down to the exemptions. You climb down through there, you see the veterans, the 459. That was approved by the voters 2 years ago at the constitutional election, and you will have 2 more on this November ballot. One of them for their widows, and the other one for first responders killed in the line of duty. So you vote to have those in. The ones below that, the optional homestead and the optional over 65, are 2 that Tom Green County has chosen to retain. We're about one of about 37 or 38% of the counties, the last time I looked, that have any homestead exemption left. The other one is over 65. That's in lieu of freezing taxes at 65, like the school district, I believe, does. So those are still optional. So we get down through there and we're handed that bottom figure. Now, I would like to say that 6.496 was about 24.5 billion, which is what Midland County is, but unfortunately, we're there. But at least we're stable. At least we're still growing, and that every county around us is losing tax base and has been about the last 3 years. So we're blessed to be stable. Okay. We'll wait and get into, and I'm sure there's going to be some comments about appraisal, so I'll save this till we get to that. With that said, I'm not going to take up any more of the time kind of with my preliminary things. The microphone is open. We ask that you kind of keep brief, and you're not limited on time until those that want to speak say they would like to shorten the time period. But please, when you come up, give us your name and your address, and we will answer and look for any information that you care to see. So,
I guess I'll get up here. Start this. I brought a big book, but I won't bring everything out of it.
I don't think they'll allow you to go through that big book.
That's good. My name is Don Chavez. I live at 12194 Twin Lakes Lane out in Duck Creek. I have a business in town.
Okay.
And this is very interesting to me, Judge Floyd, because I have to pay a penalty tax because my business suffered from a previous year. And that to me is
from what now?
From a previous year. In other words, I didn't make as much money in 2016 as I did 15, so I have to pay a penalty tax. They don't call it penalty tax, but I do, and they're right here. Also, the over 65, I guess don't apply to me because my increases on my property tax, my home property tax, went up substantially, and I sat over here for the better part of 2 hours trying to explain myself. It didn't do any good, it still went up, about 40%. I'm telling you, I've got this stuff here to prove it. So I started looking at this today because I was reading into some of the pros and cons on this thing. And I said, what have I done different in order for me to pay my bills? I've had to economize. My business, economize, I'm sorry, I've had to economize a lot. My business has been broke into 7 times. I think I've collected $30 for all their break-ins. I said, well, I'll put in some cameras. They stole the cameras. So what are you going to do? You know, it's one of those things. But I started reading a little bit about how our representatives are voting to try and get some tax relief. Well, Greg Abbott, our governor, and I'm talking to
Somebody wave their arms.
I get a
Draw rock.
There you go.
So somebody needs to pace.
Yeah, I guess my voice ain't carrying.
We cut down on our electric bill.
That's a good way to start. But, you know, I talked to his office today, and they said, well, take a look at how your representatives voted in the state of Texas. And I did. And what I found was this Drew Darby, our representative around here, House Bill 2420, 76 and 151, all increases for teachers over $1,000. I know that's kind of out of it. But my point is, he's got $11 billion in a mattress fund. Don't know what a mattress fund is. I just got it out of the excerpts that I pulled up today. They are
I
all,
don't think we have a mattress fund.
not us, but I sure would like to draw from that mattress fund if he's got that much money in there. Nobody knows what it's for. So what I'm saying is, I'm sure you gentlemen and ladies have all economized and tried to get this thing passed. My problem is, how are you going to pay for all this that we're putting up on the board if we're not going to raise taxes? And that's my point. Economize would be the first thing. And I'm sure you've all thought of ways to do things differently from that. But I'm asking you to think about what we're going to do, because that 2.5% increase, or their 2.25% increase that we talked about, is going to impact my business and a lot of other businesses that are not making what we did in 2014. And you well know that from your presentation. So again, I don't know if I can sustain my business to pay for what you're asking us to do. And that is pay the increase on taxes. We can't do that. We need to figure out a good way to get around. Every time somebody hollers, I need, you know, I'll give you for instance, I hear the city council people want an increase so they can, I guess, do business outside of the city. I'm saying, use technology a little bit. You've got it here, you can do conferencing. We've done it how many years? I conference with TxDOT when they have a conference available, something to help my business. I don't travel to Austin. But that's what I'm saying is, for some reason, it's like we got deep pockets, and we don't. We're not in Austin, we're not in Houston, and other places, and I think they're starting to feel the pinch too. But I definitely, folks, I'm sorry, but I don't see how I can survive what you're asking me to do. And that is increase in taxes for my business in my own home. And I'm 73 now. Will I be able to retire? No. No way in hell can I retire. So what I'm asking you to do is economize if you can find a way to rein something in, maybe through technology, I don't know. Maybe through some other source. If you would please consider that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
David White, 3308 Stanford, here in San Angelo. You touched on this in your presentation. You mentioned that we would cover it later. I doubt that I'll be unique talking about this. My property valuations have gone up. I was doing the math before I came up to check the website. Well, 66% since we bought our home in 2011. Now, that's the assessed value has gone up closer to 85%. So I'm paying 55% more taxes than I was when I moved here 6 years ago. Relatively short period of time. That's a rapid increase. I've interested, I'm probably not unique in that. I suspect many people in this room have had the same issue, whether on their houses or their business properties. How much is enough? You know, that tells me that the revenues to the county have gone up by a significant amount, obviously not that much. Mine has probably gone up more than any. But how much is enough? You know, and it's a rhetorical question, I guess, when I'm looking for an answer, we won't get one this evening, I suspect. But you know, like I said, it's just frustrating to see the values go up and up and up and up. And see our tax bills go up and up and up and up, and to have you come and say, we need another 2.5 cents to 3/4 cents, we can't make the budgets work. That's not an option that any of us have. You know, I don't get to go to my boss and say, hey, man, the budget this year's not looking good. I need another couple of 3% that work. I don't know many folks in this room where that works. And it is a frustrating issue. So I guess I'd like to see where some of that money going in the last. And I see the murder trials. The murder trials have gone up dramatically, and that's not a position of AMUD and had to finance those. But I question, like I said, if my property value is going, the taxable value is going to by over half. And I know that many others have as well. Where's it all going? It strikes me that, like the British one said, there has to be some need for economy. So that's where I stand. Like I said, mostly this was to come up and put that on the record and vent a little bit. And I would commend you for having this on Friday evening before we can, rather than on weekday morning when most of us could not. We appreciate that. I know that many of you, this is not going to be a pleasant evening for you, I'm sure. So we appreciate that. But like I say, just put yourself in our shoes for a while and see where people will just pay more and more and more, and we continue to ask for more and more and more.
Mr. White, thank you, and let everybody speak, and I think all of us will have, we are fully aware that people are sick of property taxes. But I'll allow everybody to say their piece at the end about kind of where we're at with all of that. Please, who's next?
Just had a few real quick things. So I really want to get down to the difference between the property tax reappraisals, because I mean, that's, from the research that I did, it looks like that's required by the state that every property be reappraised every 3 years. And then I also went and looked at the actual reappraisal proposal that was submitted to the state from Tom Green County, and it looks like we are very active on identifying very high revenue properties, or whenever there's a lot of sales going on in a certain division, then you will go and there's an option to reevaluate each year. I think that's great, because I think a lot of times, you know, if you have, and I understand there are a lot of people that have like those 50% increases, but whenever you're a business and you are making more money, you know, the economy is going, inflation is what it is. And I was looking at it, you know, overall, it's like 3.5%. So it's not crazy. It's not out of this world. That being said, that plus an increase in your tax and the actual amount that you tax per that property value has a multiplier effect. So for instance, you know, whenever I went to business school, whenever you were in business school, they teach you there are two sides of tax. There's the amount of the tax base, so how much is actually the value of the thing being taxed, and then the tax rate. And so whenever you have one going up, you will have an increase in taxes. And that's what we have in the reappraisal process. But then when you add both of them together, it has a multiplying effect that can be very detrimental to the economy as a whole. Because in essence, your government is outrunning the development and the contained within the county. And so, you know, I understand that, you know, because I was looking at it and it looked like for 2017 it was 4.2% the property values were gonna increase. And you know, that's higher than what our economy has been growing at, but it's still not crazy. But whenever I actually go in and do that increase, and then you add in I think it's around 3 cents that we would be increasing, you're looking at a budget of over 10, an increase in revenue of over 10%. That's far outstripping anything we could do out here. I mean, even when the oil is booming and everything is going, you're just not seeing 10% increases anywhere but China, really, frankly. And so that's really what I wanted to state, is that a lot of times, you know, especially out here in West Texas, we have a very core set of values that everybody believes in. We believe in the open market. We believe that it should be very indicative of what we should do as a community as well. And so whenever we have these issues where there's something that is far outrunning the increases we're seeing in the economy, it makes it really hard for people to sit there and stomach it. I mean, that's just the facts. The other thing that I wanted to state is that I don't know why, but, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the budgeting for the county, like you said, is very conservative. So, you know, last year it looked like we were projecting like a $300,000 operating deficit for 2017 in the budget. And then this year, our actual numbers ended up looking like we're going to have a $2.2 million surplus. I mean, that's a big difference in that fund balance. I mean, we're looking at last year, it was estimated it was going to be about $8.7 million in the reserve. And this year, it looks like we're tracking at it's actually going to be around 11. And so that's a big dollar amount that whenever we're actually determining these rates, I mean, that is we're looking at if we increase the taxes and you do the increase in the property value, an increase of about $3 million in the revenue. And that's exactly what that fund balance is. So a lot of this does come back to the budget. And being conservative is great, but whenever we outstrip that and we actually do better, we keep our expenses in line and revenue comes in high, I think that should be something that is taken into consideration. Thank you.
What was your name and address? You didn't give it.
Sorry. Zachary Salvador, and my address is 220 West 2D, San Angelo.
Zachary what?
Salvador, S-A-L-D as in Delta, I, V as in Victor, A-R.
You are extremely well informed.
I'm an accountant, so this is like what I do.
No, you are extremely well informed because you pointed out things that we looked at.
Yeah.
And from here, I want to throw up some information about the appraisal district that I asked them to supply me. There's a couple things that were dead on. Countywide, we were at 4.11% year over year on the same property. But to the ending fund balance, you're right, we did adopt a $343,000 negative budget, and it shows 2.4 that we're going to have as an ending fund balance.
Yeah, that moves.
Unfortunately, about $2 million of that is not tax revenue. That represents the $1.2 million that we sold that ranch for, and
Is that what that other receipts is?
Yeah,
Is that where that is? Okay. See, that's what I was wondering, because we had like 8.2, and it was budgeted last year at like 6.2. That makes a lot of sense. Like that.
And a $600,000 insurance proceed check that was in there that's fixing to get done that probably won't get done by the end of the year for an insurance proceed out at 3020 at North Bryantville. So when you filter all that down, we're going to end up with about a year over year, or at the end of year, between $450,000 and $500,000 operating surplus.
Mm-hmm.
That's within 1% of our adopted budget.
Oh, yeah.
And that is it's a two razor thin margin. Now, it's not actually there because we had to plug in some of the gaps for the cost for prisoner housing things, but very astute for picking that up. But that's a false figure this year.
And that is, and I guess that I would also like to make that comment just based off of that the murder rate is very similar to those random events like getting money in. So unless law enforcement has seen a degradation, which I don't see around the community, I mean, these high crime rates could really be something that's cyclical. It may not be something that's going to be.
I'll provide you with a little information. Let's talk about the appraisal process too. You are absolutely correct. appraisal districts, Tom Green County has 23 or 24% of the voting block for the board of directors that pay 23 or 24% of the operating cost for the Tom Green County Appraisal District. Obviously, we don't have enough votes to rename it the Central Appraisal District.
Yeah.
So, again, I've made this joke several times. Those are not personal notes from my desk that I'm sending to you.
No, not at all. And that's, that should be understood that it's everyone.
In a perfect world, you're right. They hit every property about every 3 years, and that's how they're staffed. How they get influenced is by the state comptroller's office. And this is where the control that the state comptroller's office has. They come in and do confidence, they call them confidence studies, not by appraisal district, but by school district. So they come in and we're asking this staff of 30 or 40 out there that on January the 1st, in theory, what's these 67,000 taxable parcels worth? They come in May or June and pull out fact, actual sales,
Yeah.
and compare them against that, and make sure they're within 95%.
Okay.
Well, anything that's been in the Cristobal or Wall School District the last 3 years, there's no way it's going up more than % a month out there is what the prices were going. So they find them out of confidence. So they send them back in there year after year. I think 3 or 4 years in a row, they've had to go back in and reappraise that property because you're right, there's been a lot of sales generated.
Yeah.
Everything else gets overlooked for the most part because it doesn't have a lot of activity in it. So it skews their system of trying to get to everybody on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With that said, we heard some absolute horror stories from commercial property owners when they started getting their appraisal notices.
Yeah, no, we were one of them.
Yeah, there's a backstory behind that, and a lot of that stuff has been adjusted. But I asked for, go ahead and put up that next slide in my PowerPoint a little bit. And I tracked several of those people through there, how that worked out. All the way down there, those percentage. The next one, I think, no, the next one. The next one. That's going the wrong way. Okay. All right, back up one from there. All right. See how close you were to what you figured out?
Yep.
That was year over year, and you could see the new value that went on there, and so it gave us 5.79% overall. But what that does not reflect is some of the commercial property owners that had actually received notices of showing, I saw one as high as 1,300% year over year. And we're not talking about from $100 to $1,300. We're talking about 100,000 to 1.3 million. It got adjusted and fixed. But look at the next screen. I asked them to give us a little bit of results of their overview of what had happened. And as you can see, in the commercial, that's what got adjusted this year. Now, I will, and you'll notice that the ones that decreased are nearly, get close to twice the increases on the other ones. And I will state again, I've yet to have a call from any one of the 404 thanking me for their values going down.
It's funny how
I have received numerous calls from the other ones, and you can see through that, just to kind of give a little bit of an overview. Honestly, you're not going to hear this from the appraisal district, but their chief commercial appraiser, halfway through the process this year, got diagnosed with the same brain cancer that John McCain has and died within 3 weeks. So other people had to jump on and try to figure it out, and they had a mess on their hands trying to get it straightened out. And I think it will move forward next year. In fact, I got a text about 5 o'clock this afternoon from one of those property owners that was significantly affected. And he's been to the appraisal district, and he believes that we have a way to go forward and wants to meet next week. So I cannot explain that at all. Everybody loves it when they hear their next door neighbor sold their house for about 50% more than they thought it was worth.
until,
Just don't want to pay the taxes.
yeah, until that happens too often. Absolutely, and I appreciate that extra info.
So, anyway, and here in a little bit, as we let everybody else through, I'll make my comments on the rest of it. I hate to even get started on not political opinion about things, but anyway, we will. Okay, microphones open. Man, y'all just can't get enough of this.
I know. I'm Ken Casper, 3205 Country Club Road. One of the problems I think we're facing is that we're not using the language correctly. The statute may say that we've got to reappraise property every 3 years. Nobody's appraising property, they're reassigning property values. That's a big difference. And at some point, I'm sure other counties are running into the same problems we are. At some point, it's going to become either we can't do it or we won't do it. And part of that may be before throwing down the gauntlet, saying, okay, we're going to have to sue the state and because they're not doing their job. If they want to appraise, don't just assign values. That's arbitrary and it's just flat out wrong. But at some point, we're going to have to evaluate what happens when we say no, because we're going to have to pretty soon. We can't keep simply raising values to the point where businesses close down, people move out. Who benefits then? So I think we've got to be very careful about the language we use. Thank you.
I'm Diana Ray, 6006 Marvius. I moved here a couple of years ago and I have a broken neck and my voice. Moved here a couple of years ago and purchased our home. Then a couple months of moving in, it was appraised. Everything went up. Went and talked to the appraisal office. He kept giving me the runaround. I went and got all the paperwork I needed. He said, I need to come back next week because he has to go up in the attic and get all the files out of a box. I'm like, out of a box? You guys don't keep it computerized? So I come back the next week, the same thing, run around. Then he finally tells me, well, I'm looking for this specific form. It's not a county form, it's not a state form, it's a form he specifically made up. And I'm like, do you give this? He goes, well, I give it to some of the realtors. I'm a veteran. I'm also temporarily disabled with a broken neck. And I'm like, why do you just give it to certain people? And he said, well, I'll just give it to my friends, because if I give it to everybody, then we're going to lose sales on the houses. So ours goes up, our friends goes up because they have a pool. They don't have a pool. Another friend's went up because they built a shed. They didn't build a shed. So I'm just wondering, who's assessing these?
Hold on a second, let me ask you, where did this occur?
At the appraisal district.
Okay, do you have a name?
I sure do. His name?
Yes.
Mr. Brad Wells.
Brad Wells, okay.
When I called the few realtors, I'm like, does anybody know about this form? They're like, oh yeah, we know about that form. He made up that form and we're supposed to do it on certain occasions. I'm like, what do you mean certain occasions? It wasn't done in my case. So I ended up owing $3,500.
So I just want to clarify what you just said. He dug around and pulled out a form that he said he only gave to friends.
You know, he had me going out and looking for all this paperwork to show why ours went up so much when I just moved in the house. When I brought it to him, he goes, oh, well, this is what I was looking for. And I'm like, well, what is that? He goes, well, this is a form. All the realtors know they need this form. And when I said, well, how can you do that? I mean, you have young airmen on the page trying to buy a house, they move in the house and they find out it's something they can't afford any longer. He says, I'm only worried about my realtor friend. I was in shock. I called.
Was it a homestead exemption form?
No, it was just a form he made up. It wasn't a county form, it wasn't a state form. It was just a form he typed up and the realtors had it. Some of the realtors had it.
Okay. Well, I promise you, next week, if you will contact me, I will go with you and we will sit down with Brad Wells and I will report to this group.
Because I come to the
Supposedly,
comptroller's
okay.
office. messages and no one's called us back.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, did y'all buy the house?
We did buy that office.
They had, was it somewhat in the neighborhood of what y'all paid for the property?
Somewhat,
I
somewhat.
mean, was it within 2% or 5% or what?
I would have to think about that.
I don't think it was. I
They
don't-
have readjusted it after
Yeah,
4 visits.
we adjusted it after 4 visits, and I told him I'm gonna contact the Attorney General.
Well,
And,
what y'all paid for it is fact. So
right, right.
I'm assuming that would correlate to what they would have it valued at. They're supposed to be within 95% of what the market value is.
I would say it is now, but I had to do all this and run, that's what I'm saying, and there's a form that's not a state form, it's not a county form, it's a form he made up that he gives to realtors. But he said he used to be a realtor, his friends are realtors. He said if I give it to everybody, some people wouldn't buy houses and my friends would lose money.
Well, if you
And I
look
think
at
that's.
my office is right behind here, if you'll contact me next week, I will go personally with that.
I will, thank you.
Be out there and we will chase down that scenario. Please come on that. And again, I don't know if you're here to start, please state your name and your address, please, for the record, instead of having to go fill out a form.
My name is Dan Torres. I live at 3825 Old Post Road. I've lived there close to 40 years. And of course, I've been a taxpayer since then. But before that, I was in another part of town. I was a taxpayer for 10 years. In that time, of course, I haven't seen any benefits from the county, very few from the school district because my kids went there, and very little from the city. When I went to the county appraisal district, I asked for relief because my taxes went up. It was about 4 years ago, and I was reverted back to the appraisal rate based on the value of my property. And I wasn't satisfied, but they said, no, you can talk to some lady that was there. And she, of course, wouldn't even discuss it with me. She just said, that's the rate. And we will raise your taxes for the county, for the city and the school district, but the county continues to go up. My question was, who appraises this property? My property at 3825 Old Post Road has not gone up in value. The greedy realtors think it's gone up in value because they sell houses all the time. But I think that between the appraisers, the county appraisers, and the realtors, I think that they work hand in hand to appraise properties way beyond the limit. I don't plan to sell my property, but I'm getting to the point where I won't be able to afford it because I live on a fixed income and I'm retired. And I just don't see any relief, and I don't want to sell my house, but it may get to that point. One thing that I might note is that the first house that I had on East 20th, I'll pay less than a monthly payment, a mortgage payment, than I'm paying for taxes right now. And I pay on a quarterly basis because that's all I can afford to do. Anyway, and the other point I want to make was on the county jail. I'm perplexed as to why it was built out there at the edge of town. When we have plenty of land on the Bryant Thruway, there's plots and plots of land available.
How long have you lived in Smithville?
All my life. I'm a veteran of.
I invite you to go back and look at in about 98, 99, kind of do the media search when the county was trying to decide that very issue, where they were going to build the new jail.
Mm-hmm.
And you think there's some people in this room want to talk about that because they had 4 or 5 different sites they were going to build the new county jail, and you cannot imagine how people responded to that. So they chose to move it out into where the business industrial park is now, and actually put the utilities in. And because of the instrument that the bonds that were sold were put in, they lost about 1/3 of their value, and they could not build that jail, so they remodeled it. That's all they could do with the one that we have now. So it was a very contentious issue in this county because nobody wanted a jail in their backyard.
Right,
So,
but nothing's ever gonna be built there. I'm talking about the corridor on the south right.
Probably not a jail anytime soon either, not while I'm here, somebody else can. I'm not making light of it, I'm telling you the truth. It was amazing how much discussion went on in this city for a year over that issue.
Right.
And,
Well, the
and
only
plus
other
we
thing
had the land, we own the land out there. So
Right.
that's part of it.
I knew that, but the thing that gets me is we're gonna have to keep raising taxes because all the costs are gonna be involved. With the new jail and having to transport people every day, all day long.
Well, there's also some new technology in the way that courts operate now that mitigates a lot of that, having to haul them back and forth all the time. with things. So,
I just don't wanna see 25 more new deputies, sheriffs, having to transport people if they want to do their only job.
well, it's,
I know it's not, it's
the
not
needs
your
assessment,
control.
we went through 5 different scenarios. 4 of them were staying downtown, and it just wasn't the most diligent move. But you do represent, I think, one of the hardest things about property taxes, because you can talk about the greedy realtors and the appraisers setting the value, but somebody's got to, they can set the value whatever they want, but somebody's got to be willing to step up and buy. That's the hardest thing to answer people to, such as you. Their next door neighbor sells their house for $100,000 more than what they think they're worth. They don't care because they don't want to sell it. I'm not going anywhere. And so all of a sudden they're influenced by this value. But unfortunately, that's the mandate. It's supposed to be fair and equal and uniform across. So you represent one of the deals. That's the reason we we still have the over 65 at $35,000, and the school district freezes you at 65.
Right.
There's been a lot of things to try to address that, but we can't change the fact that if your house next door to you sells for twice as much as what you think is worth, unfortunately, you're going to get taxed on that value over the next 2 or 3 years when they come around again.
I realize
The
that.
state comptroller is going to force them to do it.
Right. Well, all that I ask is that, to the best of your ability, give some consideration for us older folks that live on fixed incomes and are not going to move. If I move to another property, well, I'll be paying again higher taxes. So, so thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time to come.
Sure.
Okay.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Dennis Higgins. I reside at 117 Hidalgo Street in Los Lomas. And I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. It seems that last week about the whole property tax issue, from the presentation given at the library last week and tonight, there's certainly been an education. I do not often actively involve myself in county politics. So, as you pointed out, Judge, the slide presentation, the things we must do. There was a slide last week, I don't believe I saw represented here, of the other part of that slide that said what you were allowed to do over and above what the state or the feds mandate you do.
I actually added a couple of things after that thing, because for some reason, the allow got crunched into the He's trying to get it back up there. It'll be coming up there. It's there, it just got stuck down to the bottom instead of over on the right-hand side this time.
So, am I to understand that the state mandates that we do the fund the public welfare category? Do you have to do all those things, the libraries, the parks?
No, we don't have to, but each one of those areas have its passionate supporters. Our extension service, which is basically AgriLife out of A&M, we got our 4-H director, our county extension agents, the horticulturalists, you know, it's just, it's the best force multiplier. Libraries, you know, we've got a library that $12 million of private money built it. It has never been staffed as its expected level because we haven't been able to. They did put a $3 million endowment fund for the operations, but for a long time that money drew 9/10 of a cent a year. It just did not do much. They continually struggle for grants and this and that. And yeah, we could shut that down, but I think that represents about, I don't know what it is, but it's not going to solve our issue. And we have about 1,200 people a day go through the door.
Well, I understand. I'm just saying, I just want to clarify what the state, what the federal government, the state actually mandated to do.
Yeah, there are a host of things that can shut down, we could cease operations are. But those have evolved over the years under the allow because the citizens have come and they said they kind of wanted us to do this. The library is one of the things that goes back to a big agreement that was made with the city of San Angelo back in 1980. And we're still operating now. We have many mutually beneficial arrangements with the city about a host of things. And so we operate the library, they operate the health department. We house their municipal prisoners, even though they pay us a per diem rate. They allow ambulances to operate within the county. There's a host of those things that's evolved over a period of time. So yes, they could be shut down. The state does not say we have to do them, but you know, locally, politically, and for the citizens, I'm not sure if that's a choice that they would want to make.
Not so much objection, of course, to the library, but the county parks, for instance. If consideration might have been made to apply user fees, annual permits for the actual users, the free market would be a way of showing that if that county park was truly desired, people would support it and they would have a membership, pay the fee, whatever they needed to do. I mean,
well,
it's just one of those other areas where government doesn't always have to fund with tax dollars. And ask the people who are, like you say, are really passionate about those particular areas, have them go find a way to fund it. But I know that you gentlemen...
And to answer that, because that discussion's been had for a long time, and we've talked about that. But if you have users fees, you have to pay somebody to stay there and collect the money. Or you've got to put up some type of a gate that you got to put your money in to get inside. Well, the county's already supporting with tax dollars, and it's just one of those kind of deals. So what we do, we charge them if they want to rent the facility, we charge them if they want a RV hookup. But as far as the grounds, they're much like the city parks. You know, they're free and open. And I don't know, I have a problem fencing off the county parks and charging them after we're taxing them to go see it. And I just can't, I'm in the other half of my life, I'm in business, happy, grew up in the business world, still involved in business. So I kind of got that model, but I can't figure out how that makes any money if you have all this overhead. And if the usage goes down, well, you know, I just don't think the business model works.
Okay. One of my main points about, let's talk about, you're talking about raising the taxes and the overall budget. I'm sure each of you gentlemen have done what you could, done what your part has to review all the budget items. I got to spend a brief 10 minutes online this morning to review all these things as much as I could decipher of what the county does, what the county needs. But I'm still going to have to ask the question about, you have to go forward from this fiscal year forward to address healthcare costs, pension funding, staffing, manpower, personnel issues. Have we looked at possibly contracting out every possible other operation that the county does? And then is it possible to cut some of the staffing by attrition? You would have people retiring, you would have people resigning. Or, I mean, could a good close look be taken at these departments to figure out their functions, do stuff a little smarter. We do have the technology. So I also want to know, you know, if you can say for me, what would you say where the county has economized or cut back, so specific to not get to this level of a budget that gets shouldered on us taxpayers?
Well, I'll let y'all know, we have that information that has every line item that's been cut. That's been about a 3-month process and about 30 hours of webcast hearings for our department heads. Again, 27 of the department heads are not hired by us, they work for y'all, they're elected. So our job is to give them the resources. They take an oath to uphold the laws of the state of Texas and faithfully perform their duties. Our job is to give them the resources to do it. Once we adopt that budget and hand it to them, other than if we have no control over who they hire, who they fire. The only time they have to come back to us if they have to move something from one line item to another. That process takes a very long period of time, with many, many hours. And of course, they bring us what they want. We could go through all of that here, but I don't think anybody wants to sit through that. I will be glad next week to go through as much of that as you want, because we have in our financial system, we can track every penny that comes into this county and every penny that goes out. We can answer for all of it. I have to have help digging it out, but it's there.
Right.
But yes, we do go through that. So, yes, any of that you want to see, but we would be here till sunup if I went through everything as we tried to go through it. And tried to get to that 191-week cut, all of those that stayed flat and the ones that went up.
But as you're explaining to the taxpayers here tonight, we're always going over the budget items, what we got to pay for. There was one item that caught my attention in March of this year. It was from last year's budget, I believe. I did a Goodfellow search through the county minutes and the agendas. And I had to wonder, I don't know the back discussion or the back story on it. If you can elaborate on it, I can call your office for an explanation another time. The last year, actually in the most recent minutes, there was a line item in there about, I think it was a change order for a building out there, or 2 buildings out there for construction with a Midland contractor. And I don't know the cost of that project in particular. If you have it off the top of your head, I'd appreciate it.
The grant from the governor's office is $2,042,000.
So this all came from basically the state.
Yes, every bit of the money.
So the county was then to administer it.
Or administer.
I would just want to know that the people should know that, like you said, $2 million and lots of IT equipment was purchased out there for the base, for possibly
the hardware was purchased by the grant. The software is purchased by the COSA DC, City of San Angelo Economic Development Corporation.
Okay.
They're partners along with the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, that was a community effort that kind of falls under the economic development part from a grant from the governor's office. And we're actually fixing to, I had a meeting at 1:30 over at City Hall today directly about targeting what the next grant application is going to be in support of Goodfellow. So, yeah, that's not.
I was just hoping.
That's your tax dollars, but it's not your local; it's your state tax dollars.
Okay, and that's again. It seems like we're always going back to Austin or DC to address our issues again on what you had to do.
Oh yeah, we always want to complain to them if they don't give us enough money, and we always go beg with them to if we want some more. Like I say, we have this essential needs grant we're working on now, and we didn't solicit. I got a call. I went down on my own on Saturday to testify in front of a Senate committee, and I told them our situation with our capital situation, our murder situation. I got a call from the governor's office on Monday morning inviting us and would walk us through this. Now, I have no idea if it's going to get anywhere, how much we're going to get out of it, but at least we're pursuing everything that we can. So sure, we ask them for everything that we need and complain if they don't give it to us. So
and in my final statement, I stand here adamantly opposed to any property tax increase. And I wish that you all gentlemen, for the people that are here, do not take this as a tacit approval from the thousands of taxpayers in this county who could not or will not be here.
Point taken on that.
Thank you.
Big time.
Mr. Higgins, I'd like to kind of add to kind of what's been going on here for a little bit, to maybe give a little bit of understanding. Our position as commissioners and as the Commissioners Court, that everyone understand, or that everyone can understand, and that is, we show you up there that there are 28 elected officials, and you're seeing 5 of them here before you right now. And our job here is to take care of the budget. You elected 23 other officials out there that manage all of the other offices here in the county. We have absolutely no authority over how they run their sections. We ask them every budget year to look at their personnel, to see if they can cut personnel, if they need additional personnel. We ask them every year when we go through the budget cycle. Every time that they come before us through that 2 weeks of hearings that we hold, when they come through, we impress upon them the fact that, you know, they're responsible to the taxpayer. It's the taxpayer's money. Are you being efficient with what you do? We ask them to do that. And so I just want you to know that the 5 of us up here, in trying to do that, we understand economy of effort, economy of scale. We understand that you want the best bang for your buck. You want us to be as frugal with the dollars that we get, and we certainly try to do that. But we're limited as far as, you say, well, don't fund it, okay? We don't fund that. Then you go to that office and you can't get a particular service, or now you have to wait in line to get your car tags for longer than what you have to wait for now. And then they come back and say, well, you need to get more people in that area. It's up to that individual elected official that runs that area. So we hear you. I just want you to know we do hear you, and we do try. But sometimes I think we lose sight of the fact that we're the forefront of where you get to voice your opinions. But there's 23 other folks out there that need to be hearing what you're saying too. And I appreciate everyone that came out tonight, took their time out this evening to come out here and express that. I think the judge left on that. I think he thought I was going to talk longer. I usually do. You usually do.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good to see you all again. Mary Casper, 3205 Country Club Road. Since we last spoke last Tuesday, I've been thinking about the appraisal office. And I have, and this may be a wrong conclusion, okay, Tom Green County, you gentlemen, do not own the appraisal district. Is that correct?
Yes,
You have an interest in it, and that's it.
Yes, ma'am.
The appraisal district is run by a board of governors. Is this correct?
Board of Directors.
Board of directors, okay. Where do the board of directors come from?
24% of the vote who's on that comes from the county.
And you appoint somebody to represent the county?
Well, we submit on a slate of office, or a slate of board of directors that people have offered and willing to serve, and we cast our 24% of the votes against that, along with the city and the school district, which obviously has the biggest block of votes. Yes.
Okay.
There are individuals that live in Tom Green County that have expressed an
Yes,
interest.
I believe you.
But they're limited pretty much to hiring and/or firing the chief appraiser.
Okay, and that goes,
And approving the operating budget. From there, they can't talk with the appraisal review board.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
whole lot
right.
of walls of division through all of that.
yes, but the chief appraiser talks to the appraisal board?
No, not, only if they're in the hearing.
Well, who appoints an appraisal board then?
The appraisal board comes from the board of directors. Until this next census, and then the administrative district judge will appoint the appraisal review board members.
What I am trying to get to is who's got the final authority over the appraisal office, because it keeps going back, well, the state has it, the comptrollers has it, the county has it, no, we don't have it, and
The chief appraiser answers to the board members.
Okay, so if taxpayers are having problems with the appraisers and their attitudes and what they are told, or in the lady's case where here's this form that you have to fill out, even though it's not an official form, what seems to be that the complaint should go to the board of directors, correct?
Yes, and they're a public policy board just like we are. They publish their meetings and they are open to the public, so.
So in other words, instead of
Yes.
overwhelming you all on these appraisals and all, we should actually go talk to the county appraisal
Well,
directors.
it's good information. Now, I don't ask you to leave us alone. We're as responsible as they are. I mean, obviously, we set a tax rate. We're complicit in the system.
Yes.
No doubt about it. But they are governed by that board that's elected by the ones they collect the taxes for, just like we're elected by the citizens. And their meetings are open. So, the public can be there. I've gone and sat through a couple of them. And basically as a private citizen, because I have no right to be there as the county judge.
Right, yeah.
But I've gone through because a lot of times they get overviews from their various appraisal departments, whether they're commercial, real estate, that are kind of telling them kind of what the overall system, there's a wealth of information there that may not change what you think about what's happening, but it's good information about how they get to the point that they get with things. But
Well, look, I think people are just frustrated with not being able to get any answers, and if going to the board of directors with 5 or 6 people and then going to the meeting, I mean, Tuesday, I thought we had rather good discussions informally. And wouldn't that be nice if we were able to do that with somebody else?
I've found them to be responsive when I've asked them questions. That's where the information that I got that I presented. They presented about an hour overview of kind of what the marching instructions they had for this year. They have to come to us and present their operating budget.
Marching instructions from whom?
Stay soon.
Kind of what the mandates and where they were at from the comptroller's office and in what areas and at what level they're working. And it's posted on our website. You can listen. I asked them specifically to give us an overview of what was going on, because we're already hearing these stories about the commercial matters. So they gave a pretty comprehensive overview of how they arrived at a lot of that and where they were at in the process. Now, since then, there's been a ton of adjustments made. So it's there. It's just, my gosh, we all have very busy lives. It's hard to go research and check out anything and everything that's going on.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it.
Since she brought up the topic, I was going to bring up Ginger Moore, 4178 Liberty Lane, St. Elizabeth, Texas. Hello, gentlemen. Hi, Liz. The tax code of Chapter 23, Appraisal Methods and Procedures, was put out in 2015. It was supposed to be redone in 2017. That's when
You're the one that asked me that question.
I did. And actually, all of the appraisals come from this tax code. And it's out there on the website under statutes, LEGIS, state Texas docs. And actually, John was the one that showed it to me when I spoke with him. And that was last March. He told me that it is not the appraisal district in his, and of course, it's the gentleman that comes in and oversees his for the school district's taxes. And he also pointed out that this was supposed to have been redone in 2017, and it was not. So that's one of the reasons our tax appraisals have stayed the way they are. And if you could go back and find out for me and let me know how
Well,
that's been
I
changed.
called and specifically asked.
And what did they say?
Well, he was unaware of exactly what I'm talking about. Of course, if y'all were here the other day, the one gentleman made a valid claim about some differentials and some valuations on residential houses in the same area. Some of them were actual sales, some of them were rental properties. And I told him, I said, listen, they're staffed to get to properties every 3 years. Unfortunately, the legislature meets every 2 years. And there's a whole host of new rules coming for appraisal districts that's already been adopted. They're just not in effect yet. So at any given time, 1/3 of the properties are out of sync with everything else because they hadn't even gotten through what the last legislature did over the 3-year cycle before they've already got a new set of requirements. So it's constantly in flux about.
But it does have to go by their state tax code. And the
Yes.
appraisal tax code needs to be revised. So I'll leave that in your court. The other thing is, I was looking at the state of Texas passed legislation to provide legal representation for those who could not afford an attorney. And they only reimburse you about 5% for those, both for health and for your court costs. So can we not sue the state? I'm serious. Can we not go back and sue the
What?
state? That's why our taxes
Please
are
don't
going
take
up.
this as facetious, but it's your money, so you want me to, I don't think,
As
where's,
taxpayers?
I'll get into the politics here a little bit, but I'm pretty frustrated too. We all-
I know you are, and you're all doing a great job to support, but I'm serious about somebody taking the initiative to go back and get that money back. Because if they've given you the law, and I know that that was in the sessions that they just had in the House shutdown, but, and that's another whole issue. But I'm just saying that somebody needs to go back and make sure the state can help reimburse some of those costs, and then our taxes will not have to go up. So you won't have to listen to us if the state does their job. And I know you've already mentioned that a few times, but
Well,
if the citizens sue the state, is that going to happen? Can that happen? Ideas, just throwing ideas out. So thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
You know, honestly, I just, I gotta say something. You know, we kind of want to point fingers at each other a little bit. The reason we're here tonight is because we're proposing to raise the rate. We didn't, my phone didn't burn up with thank yous when we lowered it 1 cent, or when we lowered it 1/4 cent. Everybody just quietly goes about their way, and then all of a sudden, we have to propose a rate. The fault of that is not anybody in this room. It's really not the appraisal district. They're doing the best they can under the laws that the legislature passed. The purpose of that is sitting in this big, nice limestone building a couple of blocks over. I don't know how else to put it. If somebody chooses to shoot, stab, rob, do all of that, and comes into our system, like I say, our court system's primarily socialized since the Indigent Defense Act in the early 2000s. It's frustrating. That's what's frustrating to me about it. Yes, everything else can be fine-tuned and fixed. I mean, this discussion's been going on. Property taxes is primarily how we've been given to fund county government for 140 years. and schools, and there's been constitutional amendments, and this discussion goes on every legislative session. But particularly right now, my frustration is for those poor souls that are sitting over there in that jail that chose to shoot or stab or slice some child's throat. Somebody did it. We don't know what this is yet. We will determine. And it's hard for them. It got revealed yesterday in conversation that there's one capital murder charge that involves over there an individual accused of cutting a 5-year-old's throat. That we have already spent over $200,000 in expert witness expenses for the prosecution alone and have not heard from the defense of what their bill is. We could literally spend $450,000 on expert witnesses for that one case. We're not to trial yet to it. And we've heard some blowback about giving the employees 2%. Well, the raw data of that's a little over $500,000. We were able to move some stuff around and make some adjustments on the health care. The actual dollar year over year is $270,000. So to put that in perspective, that's the frustration that I get. I'm going to do the best I think for the workforce. That's all that our elected officials ask of us, is try to give them a qualified and motivated workforce. That's all we have. It's all we're as good as people that we have. And to put that in perspective of that one case for expert witnesses and that. So yes, my anger is directed towards that. That's not good positive image for San Angelo. We're not, or Congaree County either, but we're not the only county that's dealing with that. You know, it's a problem and we're dealing with it, and that's the thing that you expect us to do first, is take care of the public safety. You want police department. And for those of you that haven't heard in the room that's heard me say this before, we've got a great sheriff. He's passionate about what he does. They're very professional. We have a police chief, city police force, very passionate about what they do. But when that city police department marches that or detainee through the front doors of that jail, they become county property in terms of its taking care of it. The cost then come to you for the housing, the prosecution, primarily the defense, the expert witnesses, until we can pass them off to the state if they're charged with a felony. If they're convicted of a misdemeanor, they stay there and serve out. That's just what we're living with. I'd love to be here telling you we're low. I looked up a couple of scenarios that we could lower your tax rate. Chad worked these for you. We were talking about those optional exemptions. Of course, it would hurt the homesteaded homeowner and the over 65. But if those were done away with our original proposed rate for this year, we could knock 7 cents off the tax rate for everybody. If the state reimbursed all of our indigent defense costs for this upcoming budget year, that alone would be 4.41 cents, just in that one family grant. Those are the things that are very, very frustrating. I got very frustrated with the legislature this year. I went down there 3 times. And I wasn't there to protest against a tax limitation bill. I was there to protest is because I didn't think they were being transparent with you. Because twice I went down there, they had already passed a state budget that's mandated statewide an additional 13.81% more local property tax revenue for schools. Well, in this county, there's half of your tax bills in schools. They've already mandated through this competence study they do that they're going to depend on lower tax revenues to balance the state budget. Well, the same comptroller kind of runs both those lists. We'd have to cut 40% of our tax rate just to keep your overall tax bill even over the next 2 years. So I was just trying to get them to not mislead you, because they're going to give you property tax relief, tell you they're going to give you, when they've already taken action, that we know your school property tax bill is going to go up. Your rate's not going to go up, but they're going to move the situation up. They're hearing it from their people. They're hearing it. They've had an earful of property tax. I promise you, we get it too. But I don't know. I don't know where we're going to go. I've challenged the last two groups to think about, over the next 4 years, how do you want to fund state and local government? And I honestly ask you to think about that, because it's being forced into the discussion through the property tax. And like I say, I heard what I recited what the numbers were having to do with the state income tax. There's only about 6% of the people who are willing to talk about that. Raising consumption rate or sales tax rate, only about 12% were willing to talk about that. Well, that doesn't leave much other mechanism to fund state and local government. And we're so interrelated, we're just agents of the state, that what they do significantly affects us. So, I don't know, did you come up with an idea since then, Ken?
No, I've just got more questions. We talked last time about the fact that we think we've identified the problem, and now we're searching for a solution. We're not the only, as you say, we're not the only county having this problem. How much discussion is there among counties to try to come up with some sort of a solution that would apply to all? You're members of the, what is it, Association of Texas Counties?
Or Judges and Commissioners Association.
Okay.
Texas is Judges and Commissioners. And the Texas Association of Counties basically covers all of that.
Okay. Has there been any discussion in that forum about the problems of taxation and how to resolve some of them?
We were all over down there trying to get them again to join. And I told you the other day, I went down there and told them I'd be for the property tax amendment bill if they tied the unfunded mandate bill to go, so the voters can decide for that.
So we've got unfunded mandates and we've got underfunded mandates.
Right.
Those alone.
But they're going to have to come up with some taxing mechanism to make those funds whole. And
well,
I don't know. That's what I need you to think. How are you as a public, if they start raising your fees or start doing this and that or raise sales tax, you need to think about these things.
Are all of those mandates necessary?
Well, that's a different discussion. We've got one that we haven't even started to comply with, the Sandra Bland Act, that doesn't kick in until 2019. So the next budget year, we'll try to figure out how to comply with that.
What is that?
The Sandra Bland Act significantly controls how our jail operates. Now we've got to do an evaluation coming in, and there's a full-blown psych eval.
So these are bureaucratic requirements that are added to bureaucratic requirements.
They're talking about having an evaluation of a mental incapacitated.
Well, no, first of all, they're saying that when they come into the jail,
First 12
that our jailers have to decide whether or not that person is acting in an unstable manner that would indicate they might be mentally unstable. They have to make that call first.
So we have to
then we have to do an evaluation on it.
So we're getting back.
So if you're in that position, what do you think you would do if you were the jailer and somebody came in acting strange? What do you think you're going to do?
And the thing is, we've been able to get along without that for what, 150 years? So
they're talking about having it done in the first 12 hours.
Isn't there a point at which we say no?
I think that's what the judge. I think really that's sort of what the judge is kind of alluding to. Forgive me for trying to be very simple. That's just me, I guess. But what is pretty obvious to me in what we've been discussing this whole legislative session is basically there's two items, and they're both controlled by the state legislature. And so the way you stop it is that you make your voice heard in the state legislature of how you want that stopped. And I think that tax fairness movement and things like that and trying to do that are good in the intent of trying to say we're tired of being taxed. But the bottom line is, it's still, and I'm not kicking the blame off to the state. As the judge said, we're an extension of that, and we have to carry out what comes out of Austin. But there's school funding, which everybody has an opinion on, and nobody can agree on. And they tried it, I think, was it back in '05, I think, is when the legislature automatically rolled back all of the school taxes. And they said, oh, we'll make that up to the school districts. And then it didn't happen.
Right.
And so then the school districts were all left scrambling for 2 or 3 years trying to keep their doors open. And now we've come full circle right back to where we're at that point again, to where what it costs to operate schools and how the state wants to fund that. And then we use the buzzword of unfunded mandates, and that's where some lobby person or some special interest groups gets down to Austin and they get a senator or they get a state legislature to create a bill, and it sounds good and politically it sounds great. And just as the judge was saying,
I hope that was on the webcast.
But as the judge was saying, the items that come down that it says the legislatures go, hey, this is a good idea, but then they don't send any money down with it. And so they say they enact the law, they get it passed, the governor signs it, and it becomes effective either September the 1st or January the 1st, and there you have it, and there we are. And so, you know, I think that this legislative session, I feel like that the county commissioners and judges tried to make a very concerted effort to get the truth out to people in a realistic way, to say, you know, they're telling you one thing, but there's something else over here you got to watch out for. But it's got to be, we're just talking about on the legal part of that. There's several other areas out there that, like you said, underfunded, where we get some money, and then there's others out there that we don't get in. Sandra Bland is a classic example. They put this on our jail, and then absolutely no money came. And it says, okay, well, you can do telemedicine. Well, guess what that costs? We got a little estimate from our sheriff on what that might cost.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have to try to come up with.
The thing is, it feels like we're rearranging the seats on the Titanic. We're fiddling around with the local area of moving things around, but it doesn't affect the direction that the steamer is going in. Other counties are faced with the same problems, and some of them probably have worse problems.
Some are losing revenue, we're not.
They're having tax bases.
Right.
So that's where we're kind
So,
of west here.
It seems to me that there is an opportunity to get with other counties and say, okay, if we sue the state as a unit, the cost per county is going to be considerably less. Obviously, if Tom Green County does it all by itself, we're going to blow the budget. But if we could unify and sue the state and let them know that we're not going to take it anymore, and select things that we're going to just flat out say no on, maybe we can get their attention to get something done. But right now, we're flailing.
I agree. Let me kind of make my closing deal, and then anybody else that wants to speak is welcome to do it. Well, no, I didn't mean to run you off at all.
That's right.
I was just going to say, when we walked in here a couple of weeks ago on that Tuesday, we were looking at about a 53-cent tax rate to balance what we had at that point in time. At that point in time, because of the special session and Senate Bill 2 had become Senate Bill 1 in the new session, and the Senate was bound to determine they were going to get a 4% mandatory rollback election statewide. And actually, that's the bill I went down to testify against on the Saturday on my own night. What triggered me is about 4 o'clock Friday, I opened up an email from the Department of Public Safety, and those of you here heard it. It was about the 4th one I got. And it basically read, it says the Senate budget, or the state budget that's passed, demanded that we raise $11.4 million statewide in users' fees. Do any of y'all use the DPS crime lab for anything? My sheriff, the local police chief does. So they have a fee schedule that we have to use to move forward our criminal justice system. And I'd had my fill. I called my wife and I said, I'm headed to Austin in the morning. They're sitting committee hearings. The Senate was on their docket bill through there. So I went down, and our senator for this region was on that panel. And I finally, from 11 o'clock, finally about 6, after 120 or so witnesses were called, I finally got called. I was the first county representative. And what I had to say, then they had no further questions, and I was done. So I was out of there. And the good thing is about it, at least that somebody in the governor's office, somebody heard and called and see what they could do to help. But I kind of liked that. It kind of explained our situation a little bit. But that was going on. So we walked in here that morning. Commissioner Holzer read his statement, which is where we obviously got way off track with the bankruptcy. Commissioner Ford kind of opined about it. We were all frustrated. We did not know what was going to happen. We knew we had this big uncontrollable cost that we had no say-so. Those decisions were made across the street. We had no influence on that. But we're mandated, they're mandated to take care of it. We knew they were going to be expensive. There's no way to quantify it. We don't know what the average one of those is going to cost. And so the idea is not knowing what they're going to do to us next year. We don't have another ranch to sell, so we don't have another $1.2 billion to feed into the system. So we better get us some working room before we possibly be capped next year. So that's the reason the decision was made to move that tax rate right below the rollback rate. And that was done by design. It really was. It's because we don't want to have to face a rollback election. Because we know what we have to do. At that point in time, that's the reason we're here at night, because I knew that was going to generate some interest, and I thought it was a good opportunity to let people know what was going on. Now, since that period of time, we've added 2 more murders, but the special session's now closed, and the House approved it at 6% mandatory for counties under $25,000 levy, which we were not exempt from. It would apply to us. But we could have probably lived with that. But the Senate rejected it. They wanted it 4% across the board. Of course, they also refused to hear any unfunded mandate proposition to go on the ballot where you could decide if you didn't want them passing unfunded mandates, and a big transparency bill that they left untouched. So everybody got mad, picked up their toys and went home. Now, that's still out there. We've got until the 29th when we vote on that tax rate. It doesn't have to be that proposal. We could adopt a lower one. What happens between now and then is at that point in time, I will tell you what my opinion is. There will be nothing more than we know nothing has done anything but gotten worse across the street since we proposed that. We'll see if they're going to come back for another special session. You know, because now redistricting has been thrown out there by the courts. So I don't know. We will have that meeting. It's already published. It's part of our plan. And this body will make that decision then. If we can roll that back some, and then from there, we just hope they don't come back to the special session after everybody has to do that by the end of August. They decide to come back the first part of September and say, ha, we're going to do it anyway. have a 3-day special session and put it on. We don't know. Unfortunately, we don't trust them right now. We honestly don't trust them. No, and that's as a whole. It's certain ones we pull out that are certainly I have a great deal of confidence in. But that's a situation we're going to face Tuesday the 26th. Then I invite you to come back here. I'll let you know then for sure kind of what my opinion is. I'm the one that proposes the budget. I got to get these gentlemen to ratify it. They've already voted to propose the maximum tax rate. We got to come back and adopt the final budget and adopt a tax rate to cover that budget. So the decision's still out on this, and I'm being as honest as I can be. I've tried to do that the whole time. I'll just tell you, me and a couple of other ones here have to run for re-election. We got to file in December. I want to propose what I think is the right for the health of this county. I could care less about the re-election part of it. If somebody can come along and do a better job, and y'all send me to pasture for doing what I think's right, I will accept that. But I will be honest with you about it. So that's the only thing I can tell you. From there, I have no clue if we wake up in the morning and there's 3 more over there. You know, I don't know. I cannot control that, and I can't control how we're going to handle it. But I got to figure out a way to pay for it. We've got to figure out a way. I keep saying me, I guess because I'm the one that proposes the budget, but it's not I, it's us, and it's you that decide how we do it. And that's all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing us to lay out what our challenges are. Thank you for taking your time on Friday night to come down here. I'm sorry I got you down here on Friday. And if you hear anybody out there that wants another session that's not on a Friday, I'll have another. Simple as that.
You know, one thing that's real interesting about this process.
It's on the 29th.
29. You said 26.
Y'all caught that, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
We knew it.
I did that.
No, I'm sorry, it is 29th.
29.
Our regular
No, I didn't want to count. I was going to say 26 is Saturday. Y'all don't want to count Saturday. I don't want to count Saturday. But it's frustrating. I mean, I see good and bad. I mean, nothing's good about raising taxes. Nothing's good about any of this process except it's what we do. You know, I hate that word mandated, but that's what the statute says. That's what we do. We have to vote on the budget. But what I'm asking you out there, the taxpayers, and we all are taxpayers, is that I think there's a lot of education that's come out of these meetings that a lot of folks hasn't known about. And the process is one of them. I spent a lot of time visiting a couple of years ago in Austin about how this process works and how I was on a school board in Angelo, and it's a different budget altogether. I mean, you got to think way outside the box to figure that one out. But here, it's just what the legislature tells us we get to do. And I kept hearing that unfunded mandate terminology, and kind of blew it off until it hit me between the eyes. And then all of a sudden this year, y'all have used this word frustrating. Well, I'm going to tell you what frustration is. Frustration is spending 2 years working on the sale of 1,000 acres of county land and making the deal of the century and see it go out the tubes to criminals. I'm sorry, that's frustrating. I got other words for it, but not in this venue. I'm telling you, I had plans for that $1.2 million to upgrade our parks and do things. And to see it go out the window to defend.
Easy there, Commissioner Ward.
I'm sorry, but it really is, it's beyond frustration. It gets you really angry. I talked to Drew Darby, and I have a lot of respect for Drew. I think he was fighting a battle that's not going to win in Austin, and his after that meeting we had at the legislative meeting the other day, and he was hooking it back to Austin to go work. Last thing he said to me, I said, Drew, what do we do? I mean, we're up against the wall. I said, we've got capital murder trials. We've got 50 to 70 inmates going outside the county that we have to pay for. We got to pay public defenders to take care of these and defend these guys, because that's what the law mandates for indigent people that are breaking the law. We have to provide them attorneys.
Oh, by the way, not to interrupt y'all don't know this yet, I got the bill from the public defender's pool. We're up $12,000 over last year for our contributions.
No, that's, we need one of those. And, you know, we pay these public defenders almost twice what we pay the local attorneys that we hire. And they have to have other aides and helpers and attorneys and investigators and et cetera, that we have to pay that bill to defend someone that's, I won't say it, bill. You know, and I asked him, I said, Drew, what do we do? He said, I said, do we raise the taxes? He says, I said, do we go to the max and just try to, you know, make sure we're covered? Just like you would do at your own house. You're gonna do everything you can to save money, make money, and protect that money, because that tornado's coming down the alley. And you gotta have the money. Well, the tornado is over there at 12 capital murder trials. That's a emergency that we didn't bid on. We didn't ask for it, but it's there. If we ever had a real tornado on top of this, his prophecy might become true.
Who sets the rate for public defenders?
They do.
The chair one is about, I think, an average of, Nathan may know, part of those buildings get sealed by the district judge until the conclusion, because it can reveal strategy from the prosecution. So part of them is I'm unaware of.
Can the city pass an ordinance saying how much they'll pay public defenders? Can the county do that?
Well,
in other words, we set their rate, they don't.
The indigent defense plan for the county is developed. All of the magistrate judges in the county, district judges, court of laws, JPs, I could even be included on that. And that plan has to be submitted to the Office of the Court Administration and to the Texas Indigent Defense Council for approval. Now, you can set the rate at $10 an hour, but you're not going to have anybody in the pool. A chair one capital defense attorneys are pretty rare. It takes a lot of annual certification for those people to stay qualified, and they don't come cheap. And I think the rate is roughly $250 an hour. Yeah, I mean, not everyone can qualify for that, because it takes some specialized certification. We have the death penalty in Texas, but we're very careful. They've become very careful.
Where does last minute thing the other day, putting off the trial cost, what's that going to cost the county? At the very last minute, they had the jury pool set up, and then they postponed the trial because the defendant had how he was doing in jail, how good he was, something like that.
I believe that's Michael Morgan.
Well, that has part of it, and kind of let me kind of go through this gingerly. I set up an email address for questions coming up to people. I won't read this one right here, but it's somebody that was on that panel that had to make arrangements because he knew he was going to get called, and his employer wasn't happy, but he could not say a whole lot. And of course now he's released, but he was not happy with that process. He was happy that he was not going to serve, but he basically did that. But I've got to be careful commenting on that, because I don't walk in the shoes of the district attorney and the judge that's overseeing that. So I haven't seen everything. I have to trust that their sworn duties to uphold the laws and faithfully execute their duties, and they're doing it according to law. I know technically what they said the delay was needing. It was slow getting some information to the defense attorney that he said he could not review in time to do the voir dire for the jury. Now, this was information from the jail after the arrest of that defendant. There's no way I'm going to wade into that judge's discretion if that was correct or not.
It's not applied by the attorneys, just to get some more attorney time charges.
I'll let you draw your own conclusion. Yes?
Yeah, Judge, I have a few comments. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for you going to Austin and taking the initiative to do.
Thank you for being here.
And representing our interests there, which I believe you were doing. We're talking about this tax rate increase, and we don't yet know, and I realize you have to plan your budget, if the state is going to provide any funding assistance for all these capital murders. And I believe the quick response from the governor's office probably indicates that they're looking to help you. And I hope that's the case. I didn't get a chance to review the documents before this meeting as I was working.
I'm fixing to pass out some cards, and anything we presented up there,
Okay.
if y'all will send us your email address, I'll forward all this, plus I've got more documents and probably
Okay.
more review, but whatever I...
But just very quickly, there was a line item on one slide that said we retired debt in 2014. I'm assuming that's a debt of account. And then on a later slide, and I apologize for not being able to look at that in depth, but it said that we're paying $300,000 in interest payments. And so that didn't add up to me. If we don't have any debt in the county, what are we paying $300,000 in interest payments?
Well, you missed that one little
Okay.
box in that one of those timelines that
Okay.
required $53.5 million
Okay.
at the end of 15, I think.
Okay, I apologize if I missed that. I would implore you to make known to the state that the Sandra Bland Act, and I'm going to have to look into that further.
Well, and I forgot which, it's a certain bill, but I can't remember which bill number it is, but it's pretty easy to find on there.
Okay, and I'll look that up. But that sounds like it's going to continually cost us a whole lot of money. And I think we're just going to see the inception of what they're getting at in 2019, was it?
I think it's implemented starting between September. We'll have to deal with it for the next budget cycle next year.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to be horribly expensive, and we're going to be chasing our tails on that one for a long time. In closing, I do want to thank you again and the commissioners. You've taken on big responsibilities, and we do appreciate that. But I also do want to stand opposed with Mr. Higgins to this property tax increase that you're proposing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Lalaine McClellan, B, 5107 Longdale. Just a few comments. In this day and time, the definition of words is crucial, so I would wonder how even indigent is defined in this case, and who controls that definition. And another thing that's unique to our area is, too, is I believe 3 of our largest employers don't pay taxes, so that, of course, shifts more of the burden to us. Thank you.
Quick comment on indigent. Generally, everything's tied to the federal poverty scale.
Well, we know that that was raised in the last regime.
Yes, and whether it's federal, state, local, whether it be county, city, or whatever, generally there's somehow, we have indigent health care, which we're the payer of last resort by constitution for people for that health care. We have a great arrangement with Shannon Systems through, in the federal Medicaid program, if the state stood up, then they can access, with state dollars, draw down the Medicaid funds. There's been lots of discussion back there. Counties can do it too. So at this point in time, we're doing it under what we call the 1115 waiver. So we take a portion of our set aside for indigent health that we're required to do. It says that anything over 8% of our gross tax levy, the state will reimburse us for as funds are available. Unfortunately, there's just never been any funds available. So we set aside, and I think we're total about $1.8 million for the transfer that's done through Shannon. Part of that goes to MHMR to help our mental health issue. They send it up, it comes back with the Medicaid match. So it's a great arrangement to try to provide health care dollars in this community for those that can't pay. Because if they're just a tick over the qualifications for ours, which is very low, or we spend $30,000 on that one patient, then they're out of our system, but they're going to end up in Shannon's system and reimbursed here. So it's a good arrangement. But that definition's back and forth. The indigent definition in the criminal justice system is decided by the presiding judge. Part of the issue is that if they don't declare them indigent, and they have no funds and can get an attorney hired, then they just sit in our jail and their case languishes. We can't move them forward. So it's a fine line to try to walk between forcing them to go hire their own attorney or going ahead and getting them through the system. Because you realize most of that stuff's settled by plea bargain. And once they get an attorney appointed at the prosecution, about 80% of that stuff gets settled by plea bargain. And so there's little different sections in either one of those, but it's a great question, but it's generally tied to the published federal poverty rate for your area. I know that's not an answer, but that's the best description I can give.
Just then, Judge, one follow-up question. That being the case, are any of those expenses reimbursable from that defendant? And maybe that could be served and, work around the community or something to reimburse those attorney fees.
And kind of clarify, if it's somebody that's convicted that's going to jail or to prison, then no. If they're if they're felons, once we hand them off, they're a state responsibility. And the state has Texas Correctional Industries. Some of the furniture, I think in this room, well, maybe I know in my office or back there, is we buy from the Texas prison system. They have to compete like everybody else. Mattresses and that sort of thing for our jail, they compete for that business that we buy from them. So yes, we have a state prison camp out here. Somebody asked because we have $4,000 in groceries in our parks budget, and they're trying to figure out why we're feeding our parks employees. Well, we're not. We're feeding the state prisoners because we have them for all day long, and we have to feed them their lunch. So we're fortunate to have one of the few state work camps here. It's out behind the Roy K. Robb Center, out close to the new jail, and it keeps about 40, 45 inmates, state inmates that the city, the county, even the Stock Show Association uses. With Community Supervision of Corrections, the big building out at the old Walmart on North Right, they have a complete community service division that runs around with all the lawnmowers and things and mows and carries out. The jail, we have one officer, When I moved the GP offices out to the Commons back in about 95, I came down and picked up trustees out of the jail, hauled them in a pickup, and we went out there and I had a telephone in and we remodeled and did it ourselves. Well, now you got to have an officer go with you, certified jailer go with you. So we have one dedicated to that. He's got about 6 or 8 every day with who qualifies to go out for that day. And they work some over at the county shop. They work wherever they're needed. They move stuff and this and that. So we've got all kinds of those work programs going on, but it's limited. Got 2 of those crews going on out of jail. So we utilize as much as we can prisoners that meet the definition that the jail commission standard says that we can let out on work release programs. And they got to be willing to do it. We can't force them to do it. So we try to be as innovative as we can, trying to utilize as much as we can.
My name is Chris DeVore. I live at 3241 Forest Hill Drive, in San Angelo. This has been pretty enlightening for me. I appreciate you guys having the meeting in the evening like this, and I appreciate you traveling to Austin on our behalf. I purchased my home in 2011, and since then, my house payment has gone up over $300 a month. At that time, I was salaried, and I wasn't getting any raises. I'm retired Air Force, that's fixed. My VA disability was fixed, so I had to come up with $300 extra every month. I was very fortunate that I was able to refinance and lower that, and I basically was able to reabsorb about $200 of that per month. So I understand the quandary that the county is in, and I asked the question now, what are these other counties doing? I'm sure we're not the only one like this, and you mentioned that a little bit. It's like there's other counties, like I'm sure Odessa will be up there on the list, that has even more murders and higher crime and more issues. How are these counties dealing with this? And I guess, well, let me ask that question first.
I did a little digging about that because I thought we were way over the top, and we are for our size county. I mean, like triple. But there are other counties that are dealing with a massive number of felony and capital. There's a difference in the two. You have to depend on how they've been charged, but and what the crime was, but how they were charged with a felony charge or just a first degree or a capital murder. And the DA and the sheriff, they kind of work together on trying to determine what's going to be a capital murder trial and that kind of thing. And that just kind of, to me, it kind of is a word and all deal that tells us how expensive it's going to be, but it's not really the case. We're higher than West Texas towns, but I don't know what the cause of that is and that's something that's going to have to be determined by someone else, but it's happened so fast to us. It's not, it's a surprise. And you look back at our history, we haven't had 1 or 2 in 15 years. And they got settled or something, but now we've got this massive number of horrible crimes, and whether, that's got to be determined. And the judges that we've met with a lot are frustrated with it. They're burdened with their docket and their deal. So but that's our job. We are mandated, that's a constitutional deal. Part of our job is to make sure that judicial side of the county is paid for, is taken care of. And a lot of help from the state on that, a lot of things that we get help from. Whether we get help with these capital murder trials for the defense attorneys, for the innocent attorneys is a different story. We don't know. But it's expensive. It's very expensive. And it's.
I put a screen back up there if you'll turn around and look. If we look the same today as we look at January 1st, 2016, y'all would not be here for 2 hours tonight. And we would probably be rolling another quarter or half a cent out of the tax rate. And everybody would be happy and going on down the road.
Exactly. One of the reasons why I decided to retire here.
That's as simple as I know how to put it. Is that right there?
Okay, well, I appreciate your effort in explaining that because, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like our jail costs and our crime, dealing with our crime and court system is what's driving every issue
Well,
here.
it's 65% of our budget, always has been. Again, we don't operate the jail as we want to operate it. We operate it as the Commission on Jail Standards tells us to operate it. There's one thing that people have heard me say. I've been involved in systems since '91. I started going into that jail every morning on the week I was on call, Saturdays, Sundays, and all, and doing it. The first appearances, the magistrations, and that sort of thing, back when it was the old part of the jail. I can tell you that there was one thing that has significantly changed in that 25 or 26 years, is that back then, there were people that were just mean. Either they messed up, or they were just mean people, or they were just criminals. Now, fully half the people that walk in that door either have medical issues, substance abuse issues, mental health issues, or a combination of all three. They've become much more difficult population to house. And you are responsible for all of that once they walk in that door. And the Jail Commission standards tells us that there's two big components of this new jail out there that are fixing a serious deficiency we have in our existing jail. One of them is a mental health a place to hold mental health patients until we can send them someplace. We've got one in our jail now that's been there 14 months, already been designated to go get certified to stand trial. He's been in our jail 14 months because the only facility that will hold him is Vernon, Texas. Is a forensic state mental health unit. They hadn't had a bed. The last time I heard, he was down to number 23 on the list. He's not telling them we have over there. Any kind of infirmary, we're using an office and a jail cell right now. Even with our arrangement to have the jail staff or the medical staff provided by Shannon. We will actually have a place. We've had, so sad, had jail deaths over there. One of them from a detox. The other one was one we were having to take daily to methadone clinic. We ended up settling lawsuits on that, or our insurance company did. So we're trying to get facilities. ADAC, we donated 5 acres next door to our jail site. They're building a residential center. Part of it is to possibly have a place for our detox people. So it's just a much higher expense, more fragile population than it was 25 years ago. It is a challenge. Our sheriff struggles with it all the time. Him and Captain Allen, his jail commander, struggles with that constantly. And we're fixing to have to send them through. We have enough trouble getting somebody that's willing to go to work for $34,000 a year to sit in that jail with 12-hour shifts. Now we're going to have to send them through training where they become psychiatrists on top of all of that. So it's going to become more challenging. So anyway, I hope that, a little bit of that was bidding frustration where we're at.
So I guess, how can we control these jail costs more? How much are we spending on housing these criminals in other counties?
You want my pragmatic view or my faith view? Pragmatically, I don't have a clue how we're going to control it.
Exactly. Because what happens if we have another installation?
U.S. Representative Mike Conaway, he says our moral fabric in this country is unraveling. And until we do something to start weaving that fabric back together, we're going to continue to have these problems, and I don't have a better answer than that.
We set aside $500,000 back in May, May, and we're down to about 160. And out of county jail housing only, transportation.
Exactly.
So we have anywhere from 30 to 70 a month that are housed out in other counties. We are paying them to stay there because we're full. Huh? 900,000. That's before.
Yeah, we budgeted 30,000 last year, we're up to 900,000 this year.
$1 million.
Now, our jail population count was below 500. I get the census every morning. It was below 500 this morning, so we got a few less out of county.
We got a weekend ahead of us, so. Book them down.
But I don't know how any different better to tell you. I mean, it's you know, about 5% or less of our population are the ones that are causing all this problem. I don't know. I don't have the answer. All I know is if our citizens, if we don't get anything else done, when they call 911, they want an officer there, and they want them to get the bad guy and get him out of there and see that justice is done. They demand, if nothing else, that's the highest on the priority list they want from us. And fortunately, we're blessed with some good professional law enforcement people here that do that. But unfortunately, I told somebody today I would love to buy full pages in the paper and put the picture of everyone that gets a conviction and put a price tag below them of what the cost of justice is.
So we
It would scare everybody to death. It would scare them to death.
We couldn't afford to add the paper.
I'll get $5.
Maybe somebody could sponsor it.
$500 a week, you know, we could do it.
Yeah, no, these are things that I'm learning just by coming to this meeting, that how much is actually going into all this. And I have a lot better understanding now where we're at. But my biggest point here is, where is our value for living here in Tom Green County? It's like, what's going to happen in the next couple of years? I know we can't predict the future, but we have to have some kind of road forward. Right now, it sounds like we're just kind of flailing, and nobody really knows anything. It could get worse. It could get better.
Well, that's the reason I'm challenging y'all to think about how you want, because exactly what you said is the saddest story for us to get. It's the people that, especially they're older, that are on fixed income, they don't want to sell their house.
Exactly.
It's such as you that didn't expect your house payment to go up $300 a month and had to go refinance the balance and try to rearrange it just to cover the escrow you have to do. We hear that. We understand. We're property owners. I had property that doubled in value this year. Yes, we understand that. But that's the reason that the system's going to take a comprehensive look at it. And that was my, I sent a long email to the governor. Fortunately, Drew Darby's ex-legislative aide works in the governor's office. And I sent an email and I said, please, instead of doing some Band-Aid stopgap measure that's going to have unintended consequences, put this off for interim studies for next year and give county judges, we're part of the problem because we set a tax rate. Give mayors, give school superintendents, give everybody an honest and transparent seat at the table. And let's work through this and see how this state wants to fund our functions going forward, because it's unsustainable. Nobody's happy with the appraisal district. Even the appraisal district people aren't happy with what they have to do. No one's happy with that process. It's hard to get it fair and uniform and equal. And they keep, there's more stuff coming down that's gonna change the way they do it next year. They're trying to get it right. But let's comprehensively look at it, but unless you're willing to throw school finance in there, and put sales tax, talk about, oh God, I didn't have to say it, state income tax. Just go ahead and shoot me now if you want to, but
I lived in other
at
states and I
least
had to pay
put
that,
it in the mix of the discussion and let the citizens of this state tell you how you want to do it. Do we want to go up on the gas tax? You know, it's been costing us $70 a year to register our vehicle for the last, you know, we're still at the $10 1989 fee. Do we want to go up on those fees? How do we want to do it? Because we're tired of doing it with our house. We're tired of our homestead having to fund it. You know,
I think
so
the more
I don't
we
know.
express to Austin, the more you express to, not just, Drew Darby knows this, he knows the whole deal. It's just, you've got a lot of leadership, and in this session, for the first time, I'm seeing some decent ideas come out of it. Now, they haven't, many of them didn't make law, but it's moving. The idea about giving us a choice on what we do with our schools and how we can raise some money, I think it's a great idea. I think taking it to the voters is a great idea for that, to answer that question. You know, giving us a choice of letting everybody vote on unfunded mandates. It forced the legislature to give us the stuff that we have to do. You know, spend the rainy day money. It's freaking raining out there. I mean, you know, spend some of that money and fix some of these. I get a phone call weekly, all of us do, about potholes. We go fix the potholes. They can fix the potholes, and they're big ones, and they know how to do it. For some reason, it's politics that's getting involved. It just smells like the swamp, but I'm telling you that there's something wrong, and it's fixable, but it's got to be the public. It's got to be us voters.
But you got to tell the state how if you're expecting them to cover more of these funds and take care of what's, you got to tell them what you're willing to pay for. Their attitude down there now, they don't want to add taxes about anything because they don't want to put up with the blowback that we're getting right now for having to do it. They've got somebody to pass it on down to. Unfortunately, you're it. That's where I got to pass it down to. So that's what I want to do, is I want y'all to tell them, how do we want to do this going forward? And I'd love to be part of that conversation. I'm part of the problem. I want to try to be part of the solution. Simple as that. You know, I got kids and grandkids in this community too. Sure. One of them lives in for the last 3 years. He hadn't been a happy camper. You know, but you know, it is what it is. So I don't know. It's a shame that y'all. I mean, everybody's busy. They got all kinds. They're trying to raise families. They're trying to do everything in the world. So. But we need to take a little time to spend doing this. But to go back to who asked, Ken asked the question, what are we going to do about this? Actually, there's a movement underway now to get the county judges and the mayors together to go around the state doing some public hearings similar to this to try to get information and feed it into the legislature.
It's a start.
Because Senator Betancourt in the Senate did that last year in the interim studies. Unfortunately, he walked in with a predetermined solution, or a predetermined outcome that he had, and all he did is spend 18 months making nearly every county judge and mayor in Texas mad because they show up to their hearings and they just demean them.
Yeah.
But have an honest discussion and try to develop some type of at least, not consensus, but some direction, and say, here, we've done this for you, and here's what we determined in our region, in our area. Now, I don't know if it'll ever get around to that. I don't know if y'all want to pay me to run around to a bunch of different community meetings around West Texas and do that, you know, but at least there's somebody thinking out of our frustration too, is that we don't like doing it. We don't like having to tell you we need to do this. It's the last thing in the world that we want to do.
Sometimes we have to remind ourselves that the pyramid has the power at the bottom. Our system is power goes up, not comes down. And right now, we're upside down. We are at the bottom of the power pyramid instead of the focus of
You
the
saw you were at on that first slide that I put up.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It's the truth. I hate to say it, it's the truth. For us,
Yep.
I mean, it's,
Yep.
you know, what the legislature tells us is a whole lot more important than what y'all tell us. They tell us what we have to do.
Right.
Y'all tell us what,
When power comes down, it's called tyranny. When it goes up, it's called liberty. And we have to remind ourselves of that.
Well, thank you for your time. I just wish that a lot of this information was more out there, I guess, in the public. I talked to a couple of my neighbors before I decided to come tonight, and they all said, no raises, nobody's doing anything, all they want to do is raise taxes. Nobody had a clue.
those are good neighbors and good citizens, because that means they have not accessed our criminal justice system. They haven't. Or a mental health hearing. Now, if they closed the house, they like our county clerk's office, because that's where the records are kept. If they went to the library, or went to the park, or drove out in the county. But if they don't see the value they're getting from the county, unfortunately, they're good citizens, because they're not accessing them. They're paying for the other 5% of it.
You know,
I wasn't being facetious at all. It's the truth until you access those counties.
county government is one of the best kept secrets in the state of Texas. Nobody knows what the county does. I mean, it's just, it takes a long explanation. Sometimes we do what we're told. You know, I told somebody today, it's like a stepchild. I do what I'm told. And the legislature tells us what we're supposed to do. And then they give us an allowance, and sometimes that allowance doesn't cover the meal. So we've got to find a way to cover the meal. And that's kind of what we're faced with, and we don't have much leverage to do anything. And we're maxed out on what we can do in that. School districts maxed out what they can do. The city's maxing out. You know, somebody's got to give us a break. And I point my finger to Austin, but I think it goes beyond that. I said, I think you're right. I mean, we have to exercise some.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to commend y'all. Just a couple of people chose to get up to leave, so that leads me to believe that they were interested in what everybody else had to say. And that makes me really appreciate y'all coming in. Very nice to hear that.
Just one gentleman thing. The one thing that caught my eye is what she said. You know, maybe we should look at a flat tax, because if there's big companies out there that aren't paying a penny, you know what I mean? Why can't they be brought into these and have them pay their fair share?
All right. I think everybody's getting wore out.
Hungry.
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 Well, I can order pizza if y'all want to stay here.
In the county of Fort.
Yeah. I said I'd order it.
Regardless, the taxpayers pay for it, right?
Curtis, we borrowed a bailiff to come in tonight. Curtis is kind of on his off. He actually served. Sandy, my assistant, is here on her own. And of course, you know these guys. Chad works for the auditor. The auditor actually works for the district court. I don't think it's in his job description. You have to be here tonight. Liz McGill's with us. I noticed Vaughn McCurley, who's your election administrator. We didn't get into elections. Who else is coming here? Becky Robles. If we didn't have a central appraisal district, Becky Robles would have to be assigning your value and collecting your taxes, which she is eternally grateful she doesn't have to do that. Okay, HR down here is here. There is the power of Precinct 3, Miss Glenda Bacon back there. I'm probably missing some other people here, but anyway, thank y'all for coming, and I'll let whoever wants to close up. If you want to close up with a prayer for this county, it'll be fine with me. That's how we open our Commissioners Court meeting. If anybody chooses to close it with a prayer, that microphone's open.
Could you lead us?
I would, please stand with me. Bow with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for the freedoms that we have been blessed with in this county. I thank you for the parents I was born to. I thank you for the citizens within this county. It's the most compassionate community that I've known. Lord, I ask for your continued blessings for this county. I ask for continued guidance for this board. I ask nothing but the best for these people here. May you comfort those that are hurting, and may you offer your protection to those who are in harm's way. And we ask all of that in Jesus Christ's holy name. Amen.
Amen.